Welcome to another episode of First Chapter Friday. My name is Lucy, and the book that I am going to be reading the first chapter of today is called Yusef Azeem is Not a Hero, and this is by Saadia Faruqi. And this is the story of Yusef Azeem. He is living in a small town in Texas called Frey. And Yusef's dream is to be in this robotics competition. He knows that he will go really far if he can just get into it. And he is about to start middle school. And little does he know that things are about to change for him. So this year that he's starting middle school is the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks. And this anniversary has everyone in Yusef's family on edge. They are Muslims that live in this small town in Texas, and Yusef's father is very well known and regarded in the community. He owns a dollar store, and he stood up to a burglar some years before, but there is definitely tension building around this anniversary. Going back and forth in this book, Yusef has the opportunity to find his uncle's journal, and his uncle was just starting middle school in 2001. So he was the same age as Yusef, but he was there for the actual attacks on the World Trade Center on September 11th. And as a Muslim living in the United States at that time, even though he was American, that was very difficult. So reading these journals of his uncles helps Yusef feel like he could almost understand what it felt like to be there at that time and what that anger felt like that was nationwide. And this is an interesting viewpoint because a lot of people look back at that time and look at a country that came together, but it didn't come together for everybody. Saadia Faruqi is an interfaith activist as well as being an author, and she's really interested in pulling together groups from different faiths who can begin to see eye to eye. There is a big part of that in this book with a group called Sons of Patriots that also live in Frey, Texas. And in the background of all of this, we have Yusef wanting to put together a team so that he can finally make it to that robotics competition. But school starts on the first day with a little bit of a surprise for Yusef. So you will hear about that in chapter 1. I will read chapter 1 of Yusef Azeem is Not a Hero. Chapter 1. You suck. The paper lay face up on the locker floor. White-lined notebook paper, black ink. Yusef blinked and read it again. You suck. He wasn't sure if the paper was meant for him or was left over by the last person to use locker 130A. He looked at the other kids walking around, smiling and high-fiving. The student lockers in the south hallway of Frey Middle School were painted blue. Not a light sky blue, which everyone knew was for babies, but a deep grayish blue. A color that announced welcome to middle school without being cheesy. Just a few seconds ago, Yusef had been thrilled at opening his locker for the first time. Lockers were for big kids. They meant something more than storage. They meant you were old enough. He had been grinning as he spun the dial carefully to make sure he got the numbers right. 7020. Easy. He'd already memorized the combination written on the class schedule he'd been emailed the night before. That was also a middle school thing, apparently. An email account from the school, where he'd now get school announcements directly. His username was Yusef_Azeem. It said on the schedule right next to the locker code. Yusef Azeem, son of the famous Muhammad Azeem from A to Z Dollar Store on Marbury Street. And now this. He pushed his glasses higher up his nose. Then he looked down and studied the inside of his locker. You suck. The paper made everything go quiet, like a movie suddenly on mute. He bent his head and studied the paper the way he studied a new Lego instruction manual. The K had a flourish that turned into a long straight line. The Y had a curl, as if the writer had tried to learn cursive, but had given up. He breathed slowly. The hair on the back of his neck bristled. What should he do? Only for a minute, though. Someone jostled his side lightly as they passed. The world began to move again. Yusef let out his breath in a whoosh. He decided the paper was a mistake. Students were streaming into the gym from the hallway, their faces bent to their schedules to figure out where to go. Nobody could have decided he sucked in the 10 minutes since the school bell rang. It had to be a mistake. Middle school was going to be awesome. He knew that 20 2021 was going to be his year. Cafeteria food, Chromebooks, robotics club, this blue-gray locker. And most important, the annual Texas robotics competition. Yusef couldn't wait for things to get started. He'd been preparing for the TRC his entire life. It was time for life to get interesting. Principal Williamson was short and energetic, with bouncy brown hair tied in a ponytail and her face thick with makeup that shone under the gym lights. She wore a silky blue jumpsuit with sequins on the collar and held a microphone in her hands like a DJ. At least, that's what Yusef thought DJs dressed like. You needed to go to Houston or Austin for an actual concert, and Amma and Abba would faint if he ever suggested it. Good Muslim kids didn't go to concerts, they'd say, frowning with disappointment. Danielle had found a space on the floor all the way in the far corner of the gym. Over here, he waved to Yusef. Yusef sank down into the empty spot next to his best friend. Why didn't you walk to school with me? He grumbled, fiddling with his glasses. Danielle shrugged, his floppy black hair spilling onto his forehead and around his ears. My mom wanted to drop me off since it was the first day and all. I think she just wanted to show off her new Jeep. Yusef squished the tiny spark of envy inside his chest. Danielle's parents were computer engineers, and they worked in the new Exxon regional headquarters about 20 miles out of town. This was his mom's third car since Danielle was born. Come home with me after school? Danielle asked. I got a new Lego set we can build together. Yusef stared straight ahead at Principal Williamson. She stood on a little wooden stage, checking her microphone, whispering, "Hello? Hello?" "Can't," he replied reluctantly. "My mamu is visiting at dinner." "The uncle from Houston? He's cool." Yusef didn't say that a Lego set sounded cooler. That was a given. But Uncle Rahman came a close second. "Did you set up your email yet?" Danielle continued. "I'm thinking of changing my username to Legomaniac 2021. Yusef didn't know you could change your username. Why would anyone want to do that? "I'm okay with mine. Besides, what will you do next year? Change it to 2022? Danielle obviously hadn't thought of that. He shrugged like he didn't care, but his face was scrunched up as if he'd swallowed a pickle. "This is so childish," he complained, nodding to the front of the gym. "What? It's middle school. It's what they do on the first day." Yusef was sure this welcome assembly was a time-honored tradition. At least, that was what the email last night had said. The sound system crackled, making them jump. "Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to Frey Middle. I'm your principal, Mrs. Williamson, and I'll be your pilot for the duration of your flight." There was a silence, a few groans. Principal Williamson looked around with a pained face. "Wow, tough crowd. Okay, no worries. I realize it's the first day of middle school for some of you, and you're probably still in summer vacation mode. Not a problem. Now let me go over some rules before y'all head on to your classrooms." Yusef tried to listen to the rules. He really did. There were easy ones, like no running in the hallways and no fighting ever. Wandering the school without a hall pass was the biggest crime a kid could commit, apparently. There was something about bathroom breaks and a great deal about the sports teams you could join. But the note in his locker kept swimming into his vision until Mrs. Williams's face resembled a lined notebook paper with black lines on it. "Did you open your locker yet?" he whispered to Danielle. Danielle was jotting down the names of all the sports clubs on the palm of his hand. Soccer on Monday, basketball on Tuesday and Friday, wrestling on Wednesday, yoga on Thursday. "Why would anybody choose yoga?" he whispered back. "Yoga is for old ladies." "Yoga is meditation from ancient India." "I really don't care. It's for old ladies." Yusef decided there was no use arguing. He chewed on the inside of his cheek, then asked again. "Locker? Dude, I didn't even get to my locker yet," Danielle replied. "I think the last class can still access them the first week of school." Yusef didn't ask how Danielle knew this. His father, Mr. Khan, was on the school board, so all sorts of school secrets were probably discussed at their dinner table. A wave of relief washed over Yusef. The note in his locker could have been left over from the year before. It was meant for somebody else. Maybe somebody who actually sucked. Definitely not Yusef. "Okay. Who can tell me the 3 values of Frey Middle School?" shouted Mrs. Williamson, the sequins on her jumpsuit glinting brightly. "The first one starts with a P." The gym erupted into laughter. "It's perseverance," whispered Yusef, but nobody could hear him over the noise. And that is chapter 1 of Yusef Azeem is Not a Hero. So you see that Yusef really wants to be in the robotics competition, and you meet his best friend, Danielle. And you also realize that maybe he's being targeted by someone because of the note that was in his locker. Is it meant for him? You'll have to read the book to find out. Thanks for joining me.